And we are now live. So happy Thursday afternoon, everybody. Today we have got Mr. Chrstian Wassell on the call. Chrstian has just finished in the programme, the 1% Blueprint, over the last 12 weeks. He's kindly taken 20, 30 minutes out of his very busy schedule to have a chat with us, talk through his experience, what his key learnings are, and hopefully anyone who's watching can get some key takeaways from this. So before we get crack on, Chrstian, can you just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, a bit of background about you?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Chrstian. I work in finance. I've worked in finance now for about 11 or 12 years. I currently work for an Amazon aggregator called Unibrands as their head of finance. Pretty high pressured, reasonably stressful job. Not too much so. Work with some nice people, very smart people, but that's where I'm coming from. I've got 2 kids, live in central London, and a wonderful wife.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we had an initial conversation, would have been just over sort of 12, 13 weeks ago now, right? And I think maybe you'd seen a few of my bits on LinkedIn or, maybe a recommendation from someone. So what was going on for you then? Or what was your catalyst for having a chat with a coach or somebody like me? What was going on?
Yeah, it's not like, I think a lot of people probably see the stuff on LinkedIn and think, it's kind of for people who's, everything's fallen apart, everything's going wrong, and that kind of wasn't the case. That wasn't the case at all, right? It was a gradual process because of the pressures of home life, work life, of becoming, more and more stressed day by day, week by week, month by month, and sort of letting life get in the way of kind of taking care of myself, I guess, and making sure that I was capable of fulfilling all the needs of, the various people in my life, whether that be at work and whether that be at home. And that kind of resulted ultimately in getting really out of shape, not going to the gym, not running, not eating right, that sort of thing, getting more and more stressed. So I ended up being sort of irritable, a bit moody, lazy, lethargic, all of those kinds of things, that are a long shout from kind of being, in a really bad way, but still not really where you want to be, and it leaves you a long way from performing at your best or the way you want to be performing.
Yeah. I think it's that thing as well with maybe being kind of slightly out of congruence with where you want to be. It's like, well, this is me. I know me at my best and where I can operate. Notwithstanding, you can't control what happens in life, but it's like, that's how I'm showing up. And then if you feel like you're not quite showing up as the person that you want to be, and there's areas that are being impacted, I guess that incongruence doesn't feel great, does it? Right. And it's that sort of rub and want to change that.
Exactly. And it's quite strange as well being in that position, because it's really inconsistent, right? It's not like you're irritable, annoyed, and not performing at your best every day. You do have kind of breakthrough days where you perform really well, or everything's ticking, everything's firing, it's going really, really well, but they don't happen all the time, right? It's like these fleeting surges in motivation that you get. That doesn't happen every day. It's not going to happen every day, and you can't quite figure out why sometimes that's happening and why you can't have that all the time.
And it's that, I guess, that then that level of inconsistency and not knowing where it's going to come from. That's a tricky place to operate from, at your best at least, anyway, because you never know where it's going to come. You might have a good day tomorrow, or a bad day, or or somewhere in the middle. Whereas I think that's when we spoke about, one of the things you wanted is a bit more consistency with how you're feeling and operating, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it, because you can have a perfect day one day and the next day you just wake up and you just can't really be bothered, right? It's not as bad as you don't want to get out of bed and anything as serious as that, but it's you're just not quite firing, you're not quite ticking along as you want to be ticking along, and that's where I kind of felt that I needed help, that I wanted to be doing that. I didn't want to be kind of irritable and moody around the kids at a weekend because I couldn't be bothered, and I didn't want to be kind of underperforming a little bit at work or not excelling at work because I wasn't.
Because how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's more than that. It's kind of having. I think it's also kind of having. There is a confidence element to it, and it all comes full circle because that helps with various other things. But it's just not feeling great about yourself as well. You're aware that you've got kind of this lethargy, irritability, kind of kind of snapping at the slightest thing, or stressed out, and that's not the person you want to be. That's not what anyone wants to be.
No.
I don't think, really, and you can't really help it when you don't know how to fix it, right? Or you don't have the right support on how to fix it, or for whatever reason you can't fix it.
Yeah, and then that speaks back to that kind of incongruence bit, is because this is how you're showing up and you don't like it and you're annoyed about it, but then what do you do about it? And you can end up being stuck in this negative feedback loop where it feels like, what's the path out, or how do I change this, right?
Yeah, and I think people want to fix it now as well, generally. So you'll have one healthy lunch, or one healthy dinner or something, or go for one run, and then the next day or that afternoon you still feel the same way, and you get really pissed off, so you go and have a donut or a whole packet of like share size bag of fruit pastels or something, to kind of, because you just kind of throw the toys out the pram and get really annoyed with it, and there's nobody kind of guiding you or telling you that that's not what you should be doing. There are very carefully planned out ways that you can actually fix this, and you can make a big change to your confidence, to the way you're performing, to your fitness, to a load of other things.
Cool. Okay, well, I think that gives us a nice segue onto sort of where we've come from. So I think, like, if that's where you were, a couple of months back, 3 months back now, that was the catalyst for wanting to change. Let's fast forward to like today, where we are right now. What are your main key achievements or successes that you've had having come through the process? And then I think what we'll do after that, Chrstian, is maybe dig into some of like what those learnings were to help facilitate that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this. So the first thing I kind of learned, and I think that straight off the bat, is kind of this idea that you can just have very, very small challenges at the beginning, and if you start to achieve those very, very small challenges, it starts to build up very, very slowly. You don't want to start off by setting yourself, I'm going to run a half marathon this weekend if you're 20 kilos overweight or something, because it's just not going to happen. You're going to fail, and then you're going to feel worse. But if you start with really basic things that most people probably should be doing anyway, right, then you will achieve those, and you get a snowball effect on those achievements, and you can just layer in those week by week, rather than going straight into running a half marathon, as I say.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's just not going to work, and it's not going to be sustainable, right? You need to build those small habits and those small achievements in order to be able to actually do it. I think that's kind of the key takeaway for me, and that's the key thing I learned, was I think you just need to start small, and you need to be patient as well with it. I lost about 7 or 8 kilos over the whole course. I wasn't like massively overweight to begin with, but that wasn't all at once. That wasn't in 2 weeks, right? That was, you had the first bit of a drop off that you get, and then it just happens very, very slowly as you build those habits, as you start to eat right, as you start to actually enjoy eating right. Every time you have a very, very healthy lunch, or you have a good day of eating, you start to get that little sort of dopamine rush, I think, off the back of, I've achieved something there. I'm slightly better today than I was yesterday. And I think that's the key to it, really, rather than just going, I'm going to launch straight into doing what I could do when I was 21. It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well for anyone.
No, and I think the other thing is it's building up your self-esteem and self-efficacy by achieving and doing things and saying, oh, look, I have done that and it's got a result. Well, that, like you said, it's positive and it starts to snowball, versus let's do a load of crazy stuff off the bat and probably fall over. And sometimes that requires parking your ego a little bit, because that's not where I want to be, but you're not there. But that's okay. But then you can very quickly get to a place where you're even further than you thought you would be in the first place, right? What I guess would you say would your we'll touch on maybe some of the practical things that we learned throughout the process, but like, I guess, like, key achievements or things that you've achieved at the end of this process. And I know it's an ongoing process, we discussed it before, but like, what do you think? Nice one, that's that ticked off.
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of, because it does happen gradually, you need to take a good look at yourself and see where you were at the beginning and see where you were at the end. I think I'm generally just a much calmer person now, right? I don't get as stressed out about things. I don't get stressed out about work. I don't get stressed out about home life. I'm able to kind of look at things, I guess, a little bit more strategically, a little bit kind of with less stress involved. Not everything's hassle. It's kind of, okay, well, let's plan this, let's do this, we can do it this way, or we can do it this way, and then let's choose the best option, rather than being overwhelmed with a load of work or a load of things we have to do for the kids or whatever, and then ending up with this mess inside my head, and then you get very little of it done. I think that's the key achievement, right? It's just generally being more on top of life. All sorts of rubbish gets thrown at you in life, all sorts of good things get thrown at you in life, challenges, whatever, whether that be at work or at home. I just feel a bit better equipped to handle them now, right? It's not like I'm Superman. It's not like, it's kind of a finished deal. But I feel as though now I've got certain tools that I can draw upon in order to be able to handle that a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main takeaway, aside from the more obvious stuff like being a bit fitter, a bit lighter,
weight loss,
stronger, because I am, right? But that, again, the weight loss wasn't really so much an aim. That's just
that wasn't your burning bridge.
It's kind of a byproduct of doing other things, and those other things like running a bit more, doing a bit of weightlifting, body weight exercises, just generally being a bit more active, have had the positive effect. Hasn't necessarily been on my weight, because that's not what I was too bothered about, but it's been more about the handling stress, handling everyday life a little bit better. It also gives you all the things we do just give you a bit of time to kind of introspect, and it's time away from work as well, doing that kind of thing. So I think that's the main win there.
Yeah, and I think that something you said there is you can't control what happens in life and work, and there's loads of positives and sometimes there's negatives and there's challenges. And I think people talk about high performance or being a high performer, and I really believe high performance isn't doing a load of things perfectly when everything's easy. That's not high performance. That's just doing stuff when life's okay. High performance for me is when everything's a shit show, work's crazy busy, kids are all over the place, someone gets sick. I don't know. Can you be the lighthouse in the storm? Can you plot the course? Can you take a step back and be objective and do the fundamentals that you need to do and keep everything going both for yourself and others? That's high performance. And it's being confident to do that and not get in the weeds and not snap and not do that. And I think is what you're saying there, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of, you can't just, something I learned as well, and I think this will probably resonate for a lot of people, is you can't be a high performer on sheer willpower alone. It's just not going to work. You need to have, you need to work hard at being a high performer in other aspects of your life in order to be a high performer. When people talk about high performance, they're usually talking about work, right?
Work, yeah, exactly.
So I think you need to be or work at being a high performer in other aspects of your life, such as diet, such as exercise, as well with your kind of relationships at home. I think you need to work at that in order to be a high performer at work as well. It's an absolute necessity. I think if you sit down at the beginning of every day just going, I'm now just going to work through, I'm going to grind it out for 14 hours and nothing's going to stop me, you're not going to be a high performer. Your brain's going to be all over the place.
That's what I mean. I think people confuse that. That is high performance. No, that's just working your ass off. That's not high performance. Okay, that's kind of a nice segue then, is to like, well, what are some of the key takeaways and things that you learned about your journey through the process, about working on yourself, that's helped you get to this place and, working towards this sort of place of high performance in those areas we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, one of the key takeaways would be that it's that people take for granted is exactly what I was saying, right? It's how diet and exercise and kind of self-care in a way can actually impact what you're doing in other aspects of your life. It's all circular, right? It's not just like you can eat burger and chips, have a load of donuts every afternoon, and then perform well at work.
Yeah.
That's the big kind of takeaway for me, that it's all interconnected, and you need to be doing certain things in order for it to have a positive impact on other things. And that's something I'd never kind of appreciated before. I don't think that suddenly, you're dieting, you're not dieting, but you're eating better, you're working out a bit more, and suddenly you're working or you're in meetings and you're thinking, wow, I just feel sharp today. I'm thinking a bit more strategically. I'm able to speak to people a bit better. I feel more confident suddenly. You're wearing a shirt size down, and you feel a bit more confident looking in the mirror. You put on your clothes, you go to work, you just feel better and happier, healthier, and you're able to perform better. And I think that interconnectivity is the bit that people don't necessarily get. And I didn't, right? Before this, it was just kind of work's work. If I try hard, it'll go really well. If I don't try hard, get the sack, won't go so well, right? It was as simple as that. And it's really not as simple as that at all, right? Even to the point of kind of at a weekend, maybe not every weekend, but you need some time away from work to be good when you're back at work. If you're working all weekend, again, your brain's going to be fried, scrambled, and you're going to find it difficult. You need that kind of time off. You need a bit of downtime. You need to sit down and introspect to be able to do that properly. That's the key takeaway for me.
And I guess you talked about the introspection. I think this feeds into the mindset piece, because your physical well-being, like we're saying there, so heavily intertwines and is interlinked with your mental well-being, and the two things sort of go hand in hand. But then I guess there's other aspects, which is like, you can be doing that, but then if you're up till midnight sending emails, playing on your phone, not managing your stress and those other areas in the right way, well, that also then can start to have a negative impact in other areas. So I think making sure that, looking at that piece holistically means that you can then get the most out of all those areas, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also another thing that I learned was, it's back to the same point as well. You don't have to go hell for leather on everything. You don't have to go hell for leather on the diet. You don't need to go hell for leather in the gym, or if you run it, or whatever exercise you're doing. You need to start small. You can increase it quickly, but you've got to start small. When we work together, it starts off really quite slowly, just with a few like challenges that you can complete to make you build that confidence that you can do it. At the beginning of the 12 weeks, for instance, I couldn't do a press up. It's just and it's scary, right? You think you're in reasonable shape. I think you never think it's as bad as it is, and then you try and do a press up and you can't do it, and you're just going, oh god, this is awful. And now I can. And you slowly start to be able to do things like that. You build and build and build very slowly, and suddenly you've got like this. You've got this. In fact, it's not even that slow with the strength training. It's actually pretty quick. That it kind of builds up, and you just get more and more confidence as it goes on and on and on. And as well as kind of you've got to sit back and reflect on. I did that. I achieved that. That was a challenge that I've now overcome and completed. Where's the next one? And I don't think a lot of people in their professional lives get that kind of that challenge and success. They just roll from one thing to the next and never actually get that kind of sense of,
and I think
I've achieved that, and
I've achieved
won,
something. And I think that operating when you're pushing your comfort zone a bit, and by that I don't mean creative burnout and overwhelming yourself, but like exercise is a good example for that. It's like, well, what the hell's that got to do with me being good at work? Well, and it's just one example, because there's countless examples, but like, well, actually me pushing my comfort zone a bit, doing something I didn't think I could do, achieving it and doing it, well, that builds your self-esteem. I'll show myself I could do that. So then when there's a difficult conversation to be had at work, it's like, well, actually, maybe I'm all right to do this, or whatever it is, and that sort of way of operating translates elsewhere. And I think often if we've been in the state where we haven't been in control of our physical well-being, our mental well-being, we're not feeling great, as you were at the start, we were talking about, Chrstian, that like sense of like inertia and lack of control, that's not good for your self-esteem. Well, then when you start to build that back in, the converse is true. It's like, oh, I can do this, and that's it. And then I think being in a state where you're pushing forward a little bit and in amongst it, that feels good, and it breeds more of that. And it's not to say you don't have times when it's crazy. I know we had a period through it, like you had a really, really busy time at work, and that impacts some of the things you can do. But that's also part of the process as well, because you need to learn and adapt with that. Because to think that's not going to happen, like we're going to work together for 12 weeks, it's all going to be perfect. That's not how life works. And actually, I would say this, and say this to you, and I say this in the program. We want things like that to happen when we're joining the program. We want it to be really busy and crazy and impact how you be able to do things, because that's how you learn. Because if it doesn't happen, we're just doing things perfectly. And then what happened? What went wrong? How do we evolve? How do we adapt? And you fully embrace that process, which was amazing. And then the net result is you've then got more control in the future, right?
Yeah, and it's about I found it as well. There were bits and pieces that you know that work really well for you, right? So there are bits and pieces that I needed to do and needed to take control of, and the second I did them, it was like a switch had been flipped, right? And it was like, well, this is like you call them non-negotiables, where you say, well, that I'm going to build that into my daily routine. I'm never gonna stop doing that, because by doing that small thing, by using that quite small tool, I've made drastic improvements. And then there are other things where you kind of think, well, don't feel as though I need that now, but maybe I'll need it in the future. Or you can recognize
that's a lever I can pull on.
There are parts of your life previously where you can say, do you know what, I could have really used that then. That would have really helped in that particular point of my life. And that's what I feel as though I've got now. It's just having that kind of having those levers, as you say, having that toolbox where you can say, do you know what, it's after Christmas. It's the simplest one. After Christmas, I can do, this, and this to lose a bit of weight. Nice, build a bit of strength, do whatever. Or whether it's I'm really stressed out at work, or I'm really stressed out at home, or whatever. Something's
so
happened
these mechanisms
exactly. It's not all about the physical stuff. It can be about the mental stuff as well, where you're kind of thinking, okay, I need to take this, and this. I need to use these tools that I've got now to solve this problem.
Yeah.
And I feel as though I've got a lot more of that now, and kind of understand my reaction to them as well, because some bits aren't going to be for everyone, and then some bits are going to be super helpful. They're going to be helpful to an extent for some people, and then they're going to be super helpful for other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's about, right? It's not about doing everything all at once. It's not going to work. It's about just having those tools and knowing yourself well enough. And I think part of the problem is that a lot of people don't even try this, right? They don't even try. They kind of maybe go for a massive long run and go, oh, I was all right, or they'll go to the gym a couple of times and then stop going. But they don't really try to build them properly into their routine, or build them into their daily life.
It's done scattergun ad hoc, because I think you probably can relate to this. A lot of what we do throughout the process, physically and practically, and some of this, I mean, maybe some of the mindset stuff might have been a bit more different, or not challenging, but like something you haven't been exposed to. But a lot of it, it's not rocket science. It's not you or crazy, but it's just being able to help apply it in a coherent way. But then something you said there is knowing that life ebbs and flows and things happen, and it's being able to have the confidence to flex with it. It's not like this is one way, we must do it this way, and that's it. It's like, no. These are things that we've got, and sometimes we can apply a lot of something that works really well, and other times I have to change what I'm doing. But the same tools can work in the same way, but given the different context. And it's being able to know that you can ebb and flow with it. Like you said, like after Christmas, we're over indoors more, drank more, eating more, probably done less activity, and that's normal, that's cool. I'm not on a diet and on the wagon now. It's like, no, I've got levers that I can pull a bit harder because I've had that to balance things out with what I've been doing. Likewise, I'm going through an incredibly stressful time at work and whatever else. Well, I know that there's some things that I've got tools from a mindset perspective and a self-care perspective, whatever, that I can apply right now acutely that will help me get through this, that I don't necessarily need to do all the time. And just knowing that you've got those, and then also, like you said there, having the understanding of what some of those triggers are behind them and why you act and behave like that, it just adds a level of consciousness which allows any of this stuff to be consistent long-term, versus we're just doing some stuff to get a result, which is kind of the antithesis of what we're talking about,
Exactly, yeah, and that's another key point I think you just made there, which was, this course isn't driven to, people see the billboards all over London. It's not like you are going to lose half your body weight in 12 weeks, right? That's not the promise you ever made, right? Or have ever claimed to be able to do. It's about, you are going to lose a bit of weight. Almost certainly you're going to lose some weight, but it's going to be done in a way that you will continue losing weight or getting fitter or getting stronger, whatever your goal is, after that 12-week period. Because you look at some of these kind of you look at some of these kind of promises that are made on billboards, as I say, or on magazines or whatever, and you think, well, okay, I'd like to look at that person a year after that 12 weeks has ended, because
that's the point.
I bet they're not building, a sustainable practice to keep their weight down, to keep the strength up, to keep the fat off, whatever your goal is again. And I feel as though now I do, right? It's okay, overindulge that weekend a little bit. Let's take a step back. What do I need to do? I'm just going to do this, this, and this. And they're not massive changes, right? It's just little incremental changes over time that are going to help. And they're built in such a way that they're not even particularly difficult to implement, right? They're pretty easy to do. Of course, if you're going to lose weight, you're going to have to cut back on certain things a little bit, but you're certainly not starving yourself. You're certainly not, at the end of the day, almost keeling over because you've had like 800 calories in the day or something. Like it's not as crazy as that.
But that's the levers bit as well, isn't it? That's the knowing that, like, so a lot of the guys, not everyone, but most of the guys that join the program have probably got some body weight they want to lose, they want to change the physique. Some guys are like, I don't even want to talk about body weight. I need to sort this out. I'm too overwhelmed. That's fine. Usually as a byproduct, they're not looking as they want, but that isn't their burning bridge. But having said that, the tools that you use to elicit that, you maybe need to pull those levers a little bit harder to elicit that result, right?
Yeah.
Like you said. But then those same tools, you can use those to live your life forever to help balance, right? And so when you're at a place where you're comfortable, how you're looking, that's okay, good. Well, like the same things that I've used to help me lose weight and do that acutely for a period, well, I can use those to balance my life because they're things that feel good. We're not making you do stuff that makes you feel shit, quite the contrary. And I think that's the important distinction. It's a toolkit that works no matter the circumstances. And that's why it isn't after 12 weeks you look shredded, but then in 6 months you're back to where you were again. Because then what's the point? Like, I think.
Yeah, because you can't. You just, you can't sustain. And again, it's back to high performance. You're not going to be a high performer at work if you're eating 800, 1,000 calories a day, right? Because you're not going to be able to do anything if you're doing that. You'll finish your gym in the morning, have a protein shake or whatever, and then you're done. You've got no more food left for the day, and you're not going to be able to operate properly. So I think it's about building it in quite a careful way, right? And numerous times, in fact, I think there were parts where my weight had fallen off quite dramatically, especially at the beginning. It's like, you must be tired, and you're like, yeah, I am a little bit lethargic and tired. It's like you just need to push your calories up slightly. You're still going to be losing weight at a slightly slower rate, but you're going to feel way better. So yeah, it's not about just smashing a load of weight off. It's about much
it's not a zero-sum game. That's the point. Exactly. Okay. So I think that's been, from my perspective, that's been super helpful, Chrstian, having some insights as to what's going off there. And also, I'm aware that you're a busy man, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. If someone was watching this and they were thinking, they were feeling as you were at the start, or actually they're a bit unsure, they're not sure about coaching, maybe they're looking at this going, yeah, my belly's all right, but actually I'm just feeling a bit overwhelmed and I don't know where to start, but they're a bit reticent to sort of get in touch. What would you say to someone who's kind of on the fence with this stuff?
I'd say get in touch. I am not someone that usually reaches out for help. I'm not, a big kind of talker. And even after our initial chat, before I'd committed to anything at all, I felt better immediately, right? I felt as though there was some level of progress there that could take place. So I just say, just reach out for an initial chat. Like it's been incredibly helpful for me, like really, really helpful. And I think it will continue to be helpful well after the 12 weeks has ended. So, I mean, I just give it a go. I mean, I just get in touch with Luke and see how you feel after that initial chat, right? Because I felt great, and I felt as though I had already started kind of making progress before I'd even started the course, right? Just nice. By reaching out and talking to someone.
Cool. Well, thank you. And also, like as an aside, I think, like from my perspective, it was a pleasure working with you. You very much embraced the process. There were times that, like I said, that were challenging, and you worked through it, and we discussed it, and like they're the bits where you learn and have growth. And I think, like, by committing to it and committing to a process, you're the net result. And that's why I know, and I've 100% confidence that if we had a chat like this again in another 12 weeks or 6 months, you'll be where you are, if not better, because you've learned about yourself and you've now got the tools to be able to operate with it. And for me, that's another important thing, is once you become conscious of this stuff and aware of it, you can't unlearn that. So, like, you might have times when things become overwhelming and things fall over a little bit, because that's normal, that's life. but you know how to get yourself back, and you've been there. You can't not do that again. And I think for me, that's the empowering bit, because once that's there, it's there forever, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's having that knowledge and having those habits, and just and it's never going to leave me. I don't think it's never going to go away. So it's going to be helpful for kind of many years to come, I'd have thought.
Good. Well, mate, on that note, Chrstian, thank you very much for your time. I don't want to take up any more of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. For anyone who's watched, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you got some key insights from what Chrstian's been chatting about and what we've chatted about. If you're interested in having a chat, get in touch, drop me a message, or post in the comments. We can jump on and have a chat and see how I can help. On that note, have an awesome weekend, and happy Thursday. See you guys. Thank you.
Cheers, Luke.